What's going on, everyone? It's your boy Cody G. Welcome to the Dig Deeper Network. We have just witnessed another story of a tragedy coming out of Orlando, Florida, and I did a video on it earlier, and I knew that the numbers would probably update, and I promised to update the video. So I wanted to come at you with the right facts. I wanted to tell all the story that we have up to this moment. And you know I had to dig deeper on this. This story just sounds confusing. It's hot off the press, and we haven't completely figured out how to form an opinion about this. I'm showing that there's immediately a so-called Republican response and the so-called liberal response. To me, the way that the story has been presented, it leaves open some questions that I wanted to pose here, and I wanted to make sure that I had the facts straight. First of all, this mass killing in Orlando at the Pulse nightclub killed 50. I originally reported 20. 50, and sent 53 additionally to the hospital. They're putting out this hospitalized number. I wonder if that overlaps. Not quite sure. The man's name was Omar Mateen. He was 29 years old in Fort Pierce, Florida. It showed that he was once interviewed by the FBI in 2013 and 2014, but was not found to be a threat. So this guy, to some degree, has already been on the radar. Obviously, sitting down with officials with the FBI, they're probably thorough, I would assume. So here's this one fact, and it's a pretty crucial fact because this is exactly how this instance ties to ISIS. Okay, so this call made to 911 by Mateen is reported to be during the attack to pledge allegiance to ISIS and mention the Boston Marathon bombers, which I don't remember. What did we determine that if that was ISIS or not? This news, according to a U.S. official. You know, I had to dig deeper on this one. I can't find the U.S. official. The audio is not out yet, in which hopefully would produce the damning evidence that this is of ISIS. Now, once this audio is released, how do we know how credible it is? Look out to see if this audio is released, and if so, question if you believe the source of it, because that would be something pretty easy to fabricate. But that is the proof that we have that this is from so-called ISIS, our so-called enemy from the Middle East that we created by vacuuming out Iraq of the current dictatorship it was under with Saddam Hussein. So eventually, Orlando police shot and killed Mateen in this. They actually drove an armored vehicle through the building, it's being reported. But the standoff, as previously mentioned, was very long. It was a 3-hour situation. At 2:02 in the morning is when shots rang out. At 5 o'clock is when this thing finally wrapped up. By the end of it, and I assume with shooting at 2 a.m., police reported 20 deaths because they're from the outside of the building. All they have is a loose account. They haven't really gotten in there to do a body count, and they report to the media at least 20. After this situation was resolved, we woke up early this morning to find out. No, it was around the afternoon time that it came out. 50 people were killed. 53 people were wounded. This guy was wielding an assault rifle and a pistol. After a standoff of about 3 hours, as mentioned, while people trapped inside the club desperately called and messaged friends and relatives from inside the hostage situation, police crashed into the building with stun guns and supposedly killed Mateen. It appears that he was well organized and well prepared, it was noted, and that source is from CNN. just a couple questions that I wanted to pose here. I'd like to see the evidence that this guy is ISIS related specifically. I don't know if we're branding our enemy properly. I know that to some degree we created our enemy, but is it from one faction or another, or is it in general? Because if I recall, the United States has been messing with the Middle East for decades, and it's only somewhat fair to assume that they're going to want revenge on the Western people. Now, they're just a little bit tweaked, obviously. They are not, we don't share the same values, that much is clear. But if this is our enemy, if ISIS is our enemy, the ISIS that we created under the Obama administration, then if ISIS infiltrated this guy, mind you, Mateen, American-born completely, lived in New York, lived in Florida. He was from Afghani descent, his family from Afghanistan, supposedly. Secondly, is this the first time that ISIS has targeted homosexuals? Is this the first time that ISIS has gotten retaliation against gay people? In Islamic Church, I have a clip here, actually. In Islamic Church there in Orlando, it's reported that a speaker was coming, and he advocates the killing of gays, and he is very proud of that. He says it's not applicable to U.S. law, somewhat to buffer it, but it's true. He said, come on, it's the right thing. We just gotta kill them. It's for the best. It's the best thing we can do for them.
It is the sentence. I mean, look, there's nothing to be embarrassed about this. Death is the sentence.
Here's a story you won't see anywhere else. A Muslim scholar says killing homosexuals is the compassionate thing to do. And he's just hours away from speaking at an Islamic center right here in Central Florida. Channel 9's Field Sutton's been trying to find out why the group invited him to Sanford.
Many people in the Sanford area and around Central Florida are upset about what is coming tonight.
Yeah, I'll ask him.
Seminole County resident Alan Kornman told Eyewitness News he couldn't believe what a simple Google search turned up about the man speaking at this Islamic center tonight.
It's appalling. In fact, it's inciting violence against gays, and I find that reprehensible.
Dr. Farouk Sekhalishfar lives in Iran, according to his online bio, and he's been condemning homosexuals since at least 2013.
Death is the sentence. I mean, look, there's nothing to be embarrassed about this. Death is the sentence.
He admits the Islamic death sentence applies in limited circumstances and is not applicable under U.S. law. But he also says the only way gays and lesbians can be forgiven is to die.
Well, we have to have that compassion for people. With homosexuals, the same. Out of compassion, let's get rid of him now.
I asked Reverend Brian Fullwider of the Interfaith Council of Central Florida what he thinks about Sekhalishfar's rhetoric.
These issues around homosexuality and the crying of it or denouncing of it by religion takes away often from our really important tasks of helping our community.
He told me he wishes congregations would focus on helping the poor, the homeless, and the abused instead of persecuting a group that can take care of itself. In Sanford, Field Sutton, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Now, in the past hour, we spoke with one of the leaders from the Husseini Islamic Center, and he says he believes the center has a right to have anyone speak on any topic. And he emphasized it's a private event. He claimed
it's ridiculous. I don't know what it is that we're fighting. I think that we have to fall in line to some degree with what Donald Trump has said, that our situation with Middle Easterners, with Islamic beliefs, I mean, there seems to be some sort of current narrative to infiltrate our country, do the right thing, and go and create mass slaughters of people who don't follow your religion. Die for it. That's the religion. So are we against a religion here? Are we against a specific social media savvy cult? Or are we just branding outrage from our presence in the Middle East all this time? Folks, this is why we need to get off of the common liberal opinion and think for a second. How is it that this situation could have been avoided? They are making it so that the problem is somebody showed up with weapons. It's to assume that we can create a criminalless society, but the way that America works, there happen to be a lot of criminals. There happen to be a lot of people that want to sacrifice others for their own personal gain. And there are people who will pickpocket you, who will stab you, who will murder you over nothing. Now, to live in a country devoid of all of that, I don't know, suggests that we all become hippies and that we love each other. But let's be honest, getting together in a public place, especially when there's a lot of people, you gotta watch your back. If you're going to clubs, if you're a manager, like being in music, I had a lot of experience of, going to downtown Denver to work. You never know what's around the corner. You need to protect yourself. If we had armed guards in there, if there were more citizens willing to arm themselves and carry it, if the states were to allow us to carry firearms, this would be the way that we could end this scenario. The government is not who's going to come to the rescue every time. The government and the police aren't always going to be the ones who can help avoid a massive disaster. It's up to citizens, brave citizens, to take control of these situations before they get that far. If only there was a hero there at the time to catch him before he mowed down over 100 people at a club. He had the hostages for 3 hours. 3 hours. He had complete control of that situation exactly how he wanted to. He was probably committed to martyrdom anyway. My point is, we will eventually learn how to prevent these terrorists by arming ourselves. That's a fact. If we are armed, this is how we fend off this danger. That's the only way in this situation that it would have worked. Now, I don't know what it's going to take. Obviously, a lot of public officials are coming out and screaming about gun control in this regard. Obviously, gun control is the problem here, but obviously gun control has to be a point of a topic, because it's not completely to where it needs to be. Where it needs to be is that in order to protect yourself, you need to be armed in all situations. We will eventually learn how to prevent these terrorists by arming ourselves. It's going to take kicking and screaming, dragging liberals to do it. They're not going to allow us to have a gun in a public place. They will argue that to death. To be honest, it's what would have saved the day here. At this point, with ISIS being a social media thing, with people just becoming Team ISIS and then going and doing jihad, at this point, the United States has been soft on our potential enemies. We refuse to recognize who our enemy is, so we allow them to infiltrate us. At this point, we are a ticking time bomb because we don't know who and where and why, and we can't seem to penetrate the efforts of ISIS. At this point, they're quiet. They sit and they plot and they wait so they can do the most damage. We have not been restricting these folks at all, the people who want to do harm to us, because we can't tell who they are. Am I saying that there's a way to solve this and this isn't, pragmatic? Sure. I couldn't pick an ISIS member out of a line of Middle Easterners. I really don't think that it's an easy thing to weed out. At this point, they are dormant, and every once in a while, mass murder, mass murder, mass murder, because that's what they're taught, that's what their religion is, and they're willing to kill themselves in order to do it. There's simply nothing we can do to stop them unless we hit them with arms first, in the act. And to be ready and to be armed for that situation, we need to have arms everywhere. Here's what I noticed about the president's announcement here. Now, President Obama, I will give him credit. He's always been a common sense guy. Listening to him rationalize and use logic, it's coherent. There's a little bit of strategy here, though. He responds early, like he has with several other tragedies like this, and it's before everything is completely verified, and they turn it into a political bargaining chip. This is a reason to bring up gun control. Why they bring up gun control is so that they can advance an agenda that they're having a hard time limiting. So he comes out, he passes a judgment on gun control first, and still claims that more facts need to come out before he can say that this was Islamic terrorism. So he says, I don't have enough facts to point out the enemy, to name the enemy. However, I have enough facts to claim that gun control is the reason for this, that access to an automatic weapon is too easy. The only way, clearly, in this situation, is that either somebody was really good and just tackled him, right? Or someone was armed. Hopefully one of the patrons, security, etc. It needs to be there. And now we're living in a country where we're a little cautious. We have to be completely cautious when we go out in public. Going to a show, going somewhere crowded is potential for one of these ISIS cell people to find out a way to appease their gods. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning into the Dig Deeper Network. Let me know what you thought of this down below. Check you next time.